Move on. This past weekend, there was a UFC event, UFC Fight Night, Strickland versus Imavov. Bear in mind, Strickland was a late replacement as Kelvin Gastelum's face took quite a bit of damage in practice. And Sean Strickland, who who fought mere weeks ago in a losing effort against Jared Cannonier, he stepped up and stepped in against the rising Nassourdine Imavov. And Sean Strickland got it done this time, defeating Imavov by unanimous decision. The scorecards reading 49-46, 49-46, and 48-47. Omar, let me start with you this time. What was your reaction to Mr. Strickland getting in the win column this time in another 5-round decision?
You know, it was a good performance, but I have to keep in mind that I've fallen asleep twice trying to watch this fight. I don't know what it is, man. I don't know if it's, he looked more aggressive in this fight than he did in his last fight, but there's something about him not really going for, or seemingly, because I don't want to assume he's not, and maybe he is, and he's just not great at it, but seemingly not going for a finish. He gets these guys in these situations where they're kind of royally screwed. In this situation, I thought it was interesting that round 5 went to Imavov. I thought Imavov was able to come back in round 5 and at least kind of empty the gas tank there. I didn't think he had anything left, to be honest. I saw him kind of gassing kind of in the middle of that fight. But Strickland, I think, was the one who ended up taking his foot off the pedal in that last round, which I thought was a little uncharacteristic from him, if I'm not remembering things properly. So kind of some weird occurrences in that fight, but I think Sean Strickland did fight the fight correctly. I thought he kept a heavy pace, made Imavov very uncomfortable, kept him on his back foot almost the entire time. And Sean Strickland did what Sean Strickland does and just kind of outworked him. Yeah. I just think once we got to the 5th round, either Sean Strickland knew he was good, banked on the fact that he was good, which is a dangerous thing to do considering how some of his recent decisions have gone. But 5th round just wasn't his to win, but he had already had, in my opinion, 4 in the books.
Mark, what about you?
Yeah, this went more or less how I imagined it would go. Maybe not exactly which rounds were which, as Omar said, which I'll touch on too. But you got to appreciate what Sean Strickland brings into a cage. Like, the man just wades into close range again and again. He has his head straight up, and he just kind of bar fights you. Like, I know there's a lot more that goes into his game than that, of course, but like the appearance of the way that he fights, it isn't a pretty game. And he's just so good with his head movements and at understanding how he has to move to be just on the outside of punches and at blocking with his hands and with his arms that he can kind of stay there standing straight up, looking kind of, less polished than a lot of these other fighters we see look. And it's because he's more polished, like in the subtleties almost of the fight. And they say he spars every day, so I'm sure that's part of it, and that's kind of why his game looks the way he does. But he's really interesting to watch. And then he's so good at angling shots in ways that are awkward enough to get through. And there are a lot of guys with prettier technique that can't hang in the environment that Sean Strickland brings. And Nassourdine Imavov was one of them. He, like Omar said, he was on the back foot the whole fight. He couldn't adjust. He let it be Sean's style of fight. And he just couldn't hang. There was the 2nd round you could argue maybe went his way. And then the 5th, I believe, did. But 1, 3, 4 were certainly Sean, and I kind of feel like 2 was Sean as well. It was funny because the cardio did end up being a factor. Like, Strickland was certainly not fresh, but he was able to push through. And then, I do think he got a little tired finally in the 5th, whereas on the flip, I think Imavov was too concerned with his own cardio in the pace that he was being forced to fight, that he was trying so hard to make sure he made it the whole way. And then finally in the 5th, he was like, all right, I can let it go. And he actually fought the way he should have been fighting the whole fight long. And maybe he had more in the tank than he realized he did, because that was the best version of Imavov we saw in that fight was 5th round Imavov. But it was obviously too late at that point, and he couldn't find a way to get going against Strickland's game prior to that. So it was a really good short notice win for Strickland. Great way to bounce back right after a tough loss, and he's basically right back in the mix.
Back in it. Yep.
Yeah, I've said this before, and I'll say it again, and I'll say it probably many more times. There are guys who are game planners, and there are guys who are, this is the way that I fight, and you can try to adjust to me. Sean Strickland is the latter. Sean Strickland, I'm interested. Omar, you said that you felt like he was more aggressive in this fight. Watching it, I'm like, he's fighting like Sean Strickland. He fights the same in every fight.
Well, yeah, his last fight
Yes.
though, the one before this, the Jared Cannonier fight. Simple example: Sean Strickland threw kicks in this fight. Just even a slight change in that regard. I thought he was just a bit more aggressive, a bit more versatile. I thought he fought as much as he's still Sean Strickland. You can't change Sean Strickland, but he did more Sean Strickland in this fight, I think, than he did in his last fight. I feel like he was a bit more normal in this one than we saw in the Jared Cannonier fight.
Yeah,
Agree. I think he was a little dialed back against Cannonier for whatever reason, and he looked more like we are used to him looking here.
Yeah. I will say the thing that's very interesting about Strickland's striking is his striking is almost meant to disrupt and not necessarily injure or hurt or stop in terms of power. And I think that's why you saw Imavov so uncomfortable for so long, because anytime he's trying to get any rhythm, here's something from Strickland. Something's popping him in the face and messing up his rhythm. And he's continuously trying to reset, find that rhythm, find that area that feels comfortable so he can throw some sort of combination or throw something back. But he's so good at just continuously keeping that pace and that disruptive rhythm that it's something that screws a lot of people up. On the flip side, the man has so many holes in his defense that somebody at some point, I feel like, has to see it and has to take advantage of it.
I mean,
he's got a Vic chin.
Yes, did.
Well, yes, he's got a Michael Vick chin or a James
Vick.
maybe Michael Vick too. Who knows? But a James Vick chin.
Way better at his way of leaning than Vic ever was.
Yes, he's got a nice Philly shell kind of thing, but he relies on that lean so hard that honestly, one nice step in from somebody skilled is going to lay him the fuck out. Period.
yeah, and we've seen it. Yeah.
So
Yeah, to your point, he throws so many shots that have no chance, no matter how clean they connect, of remotely stumbling you. But there's still shots where you're just like, fuck, I don't want to keep getting hit in my face, and you can't adjust to the weirdness that he's just kind of peppering you with.
Yeah.
And damage does accumulate. You're not going to get knocked out, but the shit hurts, and it doesn't not hurt any less throughout the fight. It just gets worse.
I'm not saying none of his shots. Obviously, he throws some shots that have the power, but he throws these kind of shots sometimes, and just weird. He just keeps his fists in your face.
Yeah, he's always trying to touch you, always trying to make contact with your body, give your body something else to react to mess up whatever it is you want to feel out. Yeah. He's a very annoying fighter when it comes to that.
But the skill that he brings is this, because there are fighters that are pressure fighters, and there are fighters that are quite conservative and safe. He somehow is both at the same time. He is an aggressive fighter who, like Mark alluded to, he wades forward. He's constantly the one who's trying to put you on the back foot. He's constantly coming at you, and he's a pressure fighter. But at the same time, he's also very safe and very conservative at the same time. He doesn't expose himself. He doesn't put himself in compromising positions for the most part. He fights and he comes at you with the Philly shell somehow at the same time. Yeah. It's a very interesting and tricky formula for a lot of guys to try to figure out.
That's what I was kind of alluding to earlier. He's hard to hit in a way that doesn't make sense based on the style that he fights.
Totally.
One example of somebody who fights an aggressive pressure style would have been somebody like a Cain Velasquez or a Daniel Cormier. Yeah. And while you could see that kind of pressure being similar, the way they get it done, I think, is very obvious, is night and day different, right? You're not going to see Daniel Cormier pitter-pattering like that all day. He might throw a couple, jabs in your face and kind of get to the pawing, but Daniel Cormier is trying to lay somebody out, and so was Cain Velasquez.
Yep.
And also they're trying to get inside and get a hold of you, whereas Sean is kind of just trying to live there without necessarily getting hold of you.
And we've seen Sean Strickland use his ground game a lot more in the past. He's gotten away from it, I think.
He teased it a couple times in this fight, but it was more just to dictate where they were going to be, kind of.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got a good ground game, though. He should probably use it more.
Yeah, he does. I agree.
Okay, Sean Strickland back in the win column. Mark, where does he go from here? Put on your matchmaker hat, and what would you do with Strickland next?
So I kind of think he could find himself in a big fight. And the reason I say that is because so much of middleweight is booked. If we're still assuming that we're going to be looking at a Pereira versus Izzy title fight, you got that. Vettori and Delice is booked. Brunson and Duplessis is booked. Andre Muniz is booked. It kind of leaves me thinking that one of two things happen. One being Robert Whittaker needs a fight since Paulo Costa did not work out. And it feels a little wild to give Sean Strickland that fight considering he just lost his last one. But it was a very contentious loss, and it was to Jared Cannonier, who we've already seen Robert Whittaker beat. So it would not shock me if Sean Strickland kind of stumbles into being given a Robert Whittaker fight. On the other side of that is the man who just pulled out of that Robert Whittaker fight because of his contractual situation and whatever is Paulo Costa. And the Whittaker fight is such a big fight that I get he was like, no, like I don't want to do this. My contract needs to be right. Whereas Strickland, I could see him being like, you know what? This is an easier fight, and I want to get out of my contract, so I will take this one, and I will beat him, and I will get out of here. Like, I could see that being the Costa thought process. So I could see Strickland kind of ending up in either of those very high-profile fights all of a sudden.
Omar, you got any other names for me?
Yeah, I had this feeling that if Izzy doesn't take a fight with Pereira at a time that they want him to take a fight, because now things have gotten a little weird with a lot of these fights falling off of the map, I don't see it being unreasonable for Robert Whittaker to step in against Alex Pereira before Izzy gets a rematch. If that were to happen, I wouldn't mind seeing Marvin Vettori versus Sean Strickland.
Okay.
Or, in that case, Izzy versus Sean Strickland, because they already have a history of talking shit to each other.
That's what I thought you were going to say.
I mean, yes.
Wow.
Marvin Vettori, I think just because I think that's, I don't want to call Vettori a gatekeeper, but I do think for the top five, it might, in a division this stacked, I think it's kind of warranted.
Yeah. Well, remember, he's fighting your boy Delice.
Oh, is he? Did I mention it? I can't.
Dude, you're the fight announcer.
That's all I did, though. I announce it and it goes out. So if that is the case, then I think a fight with Izzy would be great, especially considering the backstory, right? The shit talking they've been talking before.
Sure.
Strickland's probably going to spend the next 2 months, if that happens, talking about how quote unquote queer Izzy is and he fucks cartoons and all this other nonsense. And then Izzy's going to spend his time talking shit to Strickland. And then they're going to throw down and they're going to see. And I think it's going to be fantastic. So I'd be here for it.
Dude, I think Vittori's a phenomenal matchup for Sean Strickland.
Oh, I agree.
I've been wanting to see that fight. Yeah, I agree.
I wonder if Vettori would fold to that pressure. Because in my head, I don't think he would. But Strickland has done some crazy shit.
Okay, moving along. Taking a look at the loser here, Nassourdine Imavov. Omar, staying with you here at middleweight. If you were the matchmaker, what would you do next with Imavov?
Fucking give him Kelvin Gastelum when Kelvin Gastelum's tooth is healed.
Yeah.
Just give him. He didn't do nothing. He's not going anywhere. Just give him Kelvin Gastelum and let's get back on track here.
I was going to say the exact same. I think you can easily still make that fight. I still think it works, makes sense, the whole deal. If we can't get that fight for any reason, I also could see Chris Curtis being a fun option.
Oh, that would be fun. Teammate of Sean Strickland.
Yeah, that's another one that fights kind of the same way. That shit, man, Imavov is not going to get any breaks here.
Yeah, Kelvin is one of these guys on the roster who I don't trust to make it to the cage.
Who does?
Nobody, man. And he's so talented. Okay. Let's move on to the co-main event of this UFC fight night this past weekend in the featherweight division. Danny Ige defeated Damon Jackson by knockout at the 4-minute, 13-second mark of round number 2. Mark, let me start with you. What was your impressions of the first round and then the moments that led up to the knockout for Danny Ige?
Yeah, so we saw Damon Jackson come out aggressive, which I guess, he was feeling strong, I'm sure, after his early finish of Pat Sabatini in the last one. And then in the first, I don't remember what it was, maybe 30, 40 seconds or so, he got clipped with a good one, and you could see that his game plan went out the window. Yeah. He felt the power, and he was like, well, I'm fucking circling on the cage now because I'm not doing that again. Yeah. And it threw off his whole offense. Like, it was almost like he didn't know how to handle it after he got hit one time. And he never really made the adjustment because he let Ige control the middle. Ige was able to have all that space behind him to move and avoid Damon Jackson ever being able to close that distance to get a hold of him. Granted, Jackson wasn't trying terribly hard to grapple, which made no sense to me. I thought he was going to be much more determined is not the word I want to say, but to push that grappling and even dive for legs if he had to and so on. Yeah, and then the eye poke happened, and I feel like Damon Jackson kind of even got more tentative, and it was just downhill from there because he kind of just stayed on the outside, striking, and that was never going to work. So I'm not sure what the thinking was on his part, but he paid for it bad. Dan Ige caught a body, beautiful left hook, an awesome visual as he dropped Jackson, looked down at him, and then just stared at the camera and walked off. That was a classic one, and Dan Ige is back in the win column with a statement knockout.
Omar, what's your take?
That was definitely a y'all must have forgot performance because he styled on Damon Jackson. I mean, the work that he did on the feet was magic. It's very difficult once you get to the top of the heap to be able to move and successfully, continuously rack up points against somebody and tee off on them the way that he was popping Damon Jackson. And like Mark said, once he caught him clean, Damon Jackson didn't want no part of that shit. And I thought it was really interesting because we've never really seen him shy away from a fight. It's not the first time he's gotten hit in the cage. It definitely won't be the last. But, we've seen him bite down in his mouthpiece. We've seen him charge into people. We've seen him, chaotically grab for takedowns and kind of work his way from there. And whatever Dan Ige hit him with, he fucking did not like it. And he responded very differently to how he normally responds to getting hit. And it was the opposite reaction of what he should have done. Yep. But Dan Ige styled on him, man. It was a beautiful performance from Dan Ige. Beautiful striking from Dan Ige. The timing, the footwork.
Yeah, he's talented.
So beautiful.
He's talented.
He's so good, man. And I'll be honest, I really counted on Damon Jackson's aggression to take this fight home.
Yeah.
And as soon as Dan Ige's crack left him without that aggression, it was Dan Ige's time for the rest of that fight. It was great, man. It was great to watch.
Dogged is the word I was looking for.
I was gonna throw it out there.
I thought Damon Jackson would be significantly more dogged chasing the takedown, or at least trying to attach himself to Ige, and he really wasn't. And if he's not doing that, there's no way for him to win that fight.
Doggedly.
Yeah.
You did take you took Dan Ige last week though, didn't you, Mike?
No. Oh, Mike did. Yeah.
Mike did. Yeah.
Yep.
Good for you.
Yeah, man. I'm an Ige fan, man.
Yeah, it was good.
I think the featherweight division is better when Dan Ige is winning.
Right. Well, he looked damn good winning, so if he continues to do that, I'm on board. But he hasn't looked like that to me in a long time.
$50K, Dan Ige.
I'll take it.
Speaking of, let's talk about where he might go next from here in terms of his next opponent at 145 pounds. Mark, tell us who that should be.
I'll give you a little trio. I know I'm supposed to narrow it down more than that. But the first one is kind of just my pipe dream that I throw out all the time. I really still want to see him fight Edson Barbosa again. I did not love the decision in their first fight. I would love to see them run it back. But I would guess we're probably not going to get that. So my two that I feel could be a bit more realistic that I think would be fun ones for him are Sadiq Yusuff, who is kind of due for, or Yusuf, sorry if I'm saying that wrong, who's kind of due for a name challenge. Or I also feel like Dan Ige and Billy Q throwing down could be a great one.
Okay, Omar, any names you got?
I wanted to see something real quick. Okay. Yes, I'm going to do the Giga Chikadze fight. I just didn't know if this kid had been scheduled or not yet again.
Dude, why is he like dead?
So he was supposed to fight. What's his name?
Oh, he was. You're right. You're right.
He was supposed to fight Sadiq Yusuf.
Correct. Yes.
And then he was out.
Yep.
But that was back in October. So whatever the issue is, he should be. One hopes he should be good. So I will throw Giga Chikadze in the mix there.
Quickly, Mark, give us a name for Damon Jackson in terms of his next opponent. Who that might be, could be.
I will be honest. I forgot to pick a name for Damon Jackson.
That's okay. We can move on. We have the clock is ticking.
I was going to try to find one for you.
Poor Damon Jackson.
Oh, dude, you know what I'll actually say? I have a name, and I'm going to give you a name because I like it a lot, and I think it works. I will go with Bill Algeo, who had kind of started making some waves and then got turned back recently by Andre Feely. I think him and Damon Jackson's a good scrap.
Love it.
I was going to say Billy Q, the one you were talking about before. I think that's a scrap, too.
That is.
Okay, let's go on. In the women's bantamweight division, Raquel Pennington gets the win over Ketlen Vieira by split decision, 29-28 on two of the scorecards for Pennington. Vieira getting her own 29-28. Omar, give us your reaction to this split decision. Do you think that the rightful winner won?
It was a tough fight, I thought. It's very possible my bias for Pennington has me leaning towards Pennington.
Sure.
I also wish this was a 5-round fight after watching 3 rounds of it. I do think that Pennington won that fight. I think I had her winning rounds 2 and round 3. But I think 1 and 3 might be ones that are up for contention. I'm not willing to die on that hill. If Ketlen Vieira had won that fight, I'd be fine with it. But I do think Pennington won that fight.
Okay. Mark, what about you?
Yeah, it was a tricky one because round 1 and round 3 were both pretty tough to score. A lot of points in that fight. Ketlen was maybe landing harder with one shot, but Raquel was throwing 3rd and 4th shots in combo that would land. And round 2 was all Raquel. In that round, she was really stringing combos together. She was landing clean over the top. She had a bunch of nice knees that she mixed in late. And Ketlen Vieira did the thing she does where she does nothing. And until she gets that aspect out of her game, she is always going to have this big Achilles heel. You cannot have a whole round of the fight where you kind of just stand there. And that's what she did in round 2. So, yes, the other 2 rounds were close. I'm sure she probably thinks she deserves it off of those 2 rounds. Personally, I thought that Raquel won 3, even though it was close. Round 1, I was really torn. But either way, I am glad the decision went to Raquel because as a fight, there were 10 close minutes, and there were 5 minutes where Raquel blew her out, I thought. So I'm happy to see the decision go to Raquel. It's a great winning streak that she is on. I thought maybe there was an outside chance she could get a title shot based on how things kind of shook out around her. Now we obviously saw the news today that they seem to be going with Irene Aldana, which I did not see coming. So Raquel probably is going to need one more here. But either way, she's in some pretty good standing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sticking with you, Mark, give us a name of where you think Pennington should go next at women's bantamweight.
So based off what I just said there with this kind of breaking rumor that they are eyeing Amanda Nunes, I don't think it's official as of yet. Correct me if I'm wrong, Omar, but they're eyeing Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana. I think the fight to make is Raquel Pennington and Juliana Pena. And the winner of that one can get the winner of the one I just mentioned before that.
I love it. Omar, what about you?
It hasn't happened yet, which I should say. A lot of these women have already fought each other in this division. They never have.
Yeah, so Amanda Nunes currently they are looking at Amanda Nunes and Irene Aldana, like Mark said. I mean, there's not really very many people that you can. I mean, has Pennington ever fought Holly Holm? Has that actually happened?
Yeah, she got beat by Holly.
That sounds about right. If we're not going to put her back against Holly Holm, then because Holly Holm is still very much in the mix, and if Pennington's going to keep working her way up, I think it happened a long time ago, or at least a good amount of time, the last time they fought. But the Juliana Pena one, I think, would be the next one. And I got to be honest, I think Juliana Pena probably works her quite a bit. They're very similar fighters in terms of their styles and their workhorse mentality. And I think Juliana Pena just has a few more tools in the box to get that done.
Okay. Do you guys want to match up Ketlen?
I'll throw one out. She's in a tough spot now that she's taken a loss, because if it's going to be Amanda and Aldana, I do feel like Pennington and Pena makes sense. It's not like she's going to fight Holm again right now, so she's kind of in a place where below those names it's like a little bit of a fall off, so it feels like you're kind of moving her down a bit. But you got to do it to match her up, because none of those other matchups really make sense at this moment. So I'll say maybe Macy Chasson is a fight that they could make.
I like it. Omar, if you have any other names, let me know. Otherwise, we can move on.
Yeah, we'll move on.
Okay, one more to recap, boys, before we jump into our lightning round. In the bantamweight division, Umar Nurmagomedov defeated Raoni Barcelos by knockout via body kick followed up by punch. 4:40 of round number 1. Omar, go first. What is your take on Nurmagomedov still looking amazing?
Umar's a problem, man. They spent the good majority of that fight just sort of playing around and feeling each other out, and kind of in the striking realm, kind of not getting too close, not really putting too many things on the line, just really a feeling out process. And then just out of nowhere, just goes right in with a body kick, almost like I've learned it, or have it been described to me as a seatbelt kick, because it goes kind of the shin goes across the belly, almost like a seatbelt would.
Yeah, it almost looked like a knee that he then extended into a kick. You think it was
very
a kick
possible.
jump?
Honestly, it could have been like what happened with Marlon Moraes that one time, where he was kind of going for a kick and ended up with the knee. Who knows? But either way, it landed pretty damn flush. I didn't think he got a ton of power on it, but it did land flush, and then a nice little check hook on the way down, and it caught Raoni right on the switch and just put him right out. It was a crazy little scene, and then just another super necessary shot, of course, right after. But wild little exchange that ended in a nice knockout. Umar's a problem. Umar is a definite problem.
Mark, how much of a problem do you think Umar Nurmagomedov is?
He's really good. Just to be able to put out Raoni Barcelos like that tells you that right off the bat. It is always a little bit hard to gauge how good people are off of knockouts, because like the fight was super competitive to that point. It's not like it wasn't a close fight. It was a close fight. So if he doesn't land that left as clean as he did, maybe we get 10 more minutes of a super close fight. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like it's almost easier when a guy dominates a guy for a long fight to be like, wow, he's so unbelievable. When the kind of flash knockout happens, it's like, well, he did catch him. I wonder if like that's how it would go if they fought again. So it's a little harder to evaluate. But I don't want to take anything away from him, because he knocked him the fuck out, and it was unbelievable. And I rate Raoni Barcelos very highly, as I've noted on here before. To my knowledge, I don't believe he's ever been knocked out before. So simply to do that is a huge feather in Umar's cap. And he looked great. He was never hurt at any point, as dynamic as Barcelos may be. I mean, they had fun exchanges. It was fun watching them while it lasted. I really wanted to see them grapple a bit too, and see kind of what Barcelos could do there. If Umar was just so much better than him in the grappling, or if it would be competitive. I want to learn more about where Umar stacks up levels wise, and I was hoping to see some grappling to learn there. But we didn't get it. But yeah, the finish was unbelievable. It was almost the opposite of the Alex Caceres same side combo that we discussed, where Alex led with the left hook and finished with the left high kick. In this case, Umar led with the left knee or kick, whichever you want to call it, and then came over with the left hook. And Raoni was still thinking about the body, and his hands were not up. And he ate a clean left hook, and that's how it goes. That was all she wrote. A monster statement for Umar to do that in that fashion. And his next fight, I believe, will be a top 10 opponent.
Speaking of, Omar, what top 10 bantamweight do you think that Umar should go up against next? Hit us. Oh,
Omar, you're muted.
Silent. You're muted.
Sorry. There's the one where I think that he should, and then there's one that I think that he more than likely will, because I don't think the other one will probably happen. I think he should go up against Dominic Cruz.
I knew you were going to say that.
I think he should go up. I mean, stylistically, that is a fucked up fight for everybody. That is a wild little fight.
Why would you want to do that to Cruz?
I mean, Cruz is always talking about if you're the best, then you need to fight the best if you're going to keep your position. So keep your position. You haven't done shit. You just lost to Marlon Vera. You got your face smashed in. Time to fight somebody below you.
I think that's who I just said for Saeed Nurmagomedov, if I remember right. We're just trying to throw all the Nurmagomedov at Cruz.
Yep. And to be honest, man, again, if he deserves to be in the top 10, then he needs to fight for his spot in the top 10. He lost the fight against Marlon Vera. He lost it. He was arguably winning a points fight in that matchup, and then got completely smashed in the face. So he can find somebody underneath, especially somebody as, at this point, impressive as Umar Nurmagomedov. This is not some random ass top 15 guy they're going to throw it his way. This is a guy who's really doing work and putting on impressive performances and looking like somebody who could potentially beat Dominic Cruz. So
I could see, I know we always say how it's hard to get Dominic to take a fight with a guy below him, the whole deal. I could see Dominic Cruz be intrigued to fight someone from that camp and of that style, and B, to take the O of Umar Nurmagomedov enough to say, I'll do it.
Shit, I'll take it then. I'll take it. I'm going to stick with Dominic Cruz then. Let's go.
I like that. I considered saying it myself. I settled on Song Yadong. I believe he is ranked right next to Dominic Cruz. But I think that'd be an awesome one. I think there are a lot of angles to that fight that could be really interesting, and that could tell us some more about just how good Umar may be.
That was that's more than likely to happen pick. That was what that was.
Mark, what about Raoni?
I forgot to match up the losers on this fucking
That's
episode
okay.
for
we
one
don't
reason
have
or
to.
another.
We can just march on.
I don't know what's wrong with me. And Raoni's my fucking guy, too. Dude, you know what would be dope? One's coming off a win and one's coming off a loss, but I would like to see it. We're going to touch on my boy Javid Basharat in a bit, who they just keep giving unranked fighters to and not really moving him up the line, despite the fact that he is now 14-0 overall and looks incredible. I would like to see him get a shot at Raoni Barcelos and kind of break through to the rankings mix. He's asking for a ranked fighter, and I guess I could see it happen, but that'd be a fun one.
Okay. Let's go on to our lightning round. Folks, if you're not familiar with the lightning round, is where I challenge Mark and Omar to give me their lightningest picks, a phrase or two. Let's see how well they adhere to this.
The first guy in the lightning round is Javid Basharat. Oh, no, it's not. Sorry, one more before that. My bad.
Yeah. Okay, lightning round. Here we go. Roman Kopylov, round two knockout over my guy, Punahele Soriano. Mark, go first.
Yeah, Puna just never let this fight, happen, I feel. He never let the flow of the fight begin. He just went out there and, headhunted like crazy from the second the bell rang. He never threw a jab. There was no combos. There was never even really any setups. He was just winging. And, we're not going to confuse Puna with Floyd Mayweather anytime soon, but he can certainly fight a lot smarter than the way that he did fight. So I wasn't thrilled with that. And Kopylov fought well. He worked off the back foot. He evaded the big bombs, and he found his opening, which was to the body. And those were brutal body shots. And Puna's a tough dude. He was trying to eat him, but it was just one too many, and the last one turned him off. So nice win for Kopylov.
Omar, go.
This was a disappointing one, and I think just like Mark was alluding to, it's difficult to not be annoyed by a fight like this when it comes to Puna because he can do better. We've seen him do better. He doesn't always just headhunt like this, and for whatever reason he did, and it cost him. It cost him big. He was fucked up by the end of that fight.
Yeah, man. Okay. Javid Basharat, UD over Matios Mendonca. Omar, go first.
I like me some Javid. I'm a big fan of this guy and the way that he fights. I had him winning all 3 rounds. I know one of the judges had him round 1 go to Mendonca. I thought it was all 3 rounds. Maybe the first round was closer than I realized, but I thought it was pretty clear.
Mark.
I had all 3 for him, too. I love Javid Basharat, man. I've been talking this guy up since his debut. They put him across from a clearly skilled finisher in Mendonce, and it didn't matter one bit. He used Mendonce's aggression. He pulled him into clean strikes all fight long. He mixed in the takedowns. He showed off his grappling, and he just did what Javid Basharat does. Like, it is time, as I alluded to a moment ago, it is time to give this guy someone real. I don't need any more debuting fighters or lower-level fighters. No matter how much hype they come in with, like this dude Mendonce did, it's time for Javid Basharat to be in a real fight.
So it's Mendonce then?
Yes.
My bad.
You just let us go on and just kept saying Mendonca?
I almost jumped in a couple times, but you guys were like on to the next words already, and I was like, oh, I'm too late.
It happens. Okay, Abdul Razak Al Hassan, round 2 knockout over Claudio Ribeiro. Mark, sticking with you, go first.
That was how I saw this one going. I saw Ribeiro on Contender Series, and he's got big fucking power for sure, but the technique just isn't there yet. And across from a guy who's got as much power as he does in Al Hassan, it was going to come down to who got hit clean first, and I trusted the technique on the side of Al Hassan, and that's what it was. So a big KO win for him.
Omar.
Ribeiro had a real interesting walkout ceremony where his mother, perhaps, or some female within an older woman within his camp came over and gave him, must have been one of the craziest pep talks I've ever seen. This shit was so intense. A lot of emotion in there, and then flipped over to another male, either trainer or maybe perhaps family member or both, who also gave him a really intense stare down and like conversation. My wife was very confused by this, and she was wondering why this is happening. And then at the same time, I was like, man, if he loses his fight after all this, it's going to be pretty fucking horrible. And then he got completely destroyed in that second round. I mean, that's as bad as strikes get. It was right hand. It was like watching somebody nail something into a wooden board. Just right hand. He kept going down with each right hand, just lower and lower until he reached the ground. It was a beating in that second round. First round was a little back and forth, a little bit more even. One would even say Al Hassan might have even lost that first round. But the second round, he killed that kid.
Okay, Matias Rebecki, UD over Nick Fiore. Omar, sticking with you. Take it.
Robeski?
Excuse me.
Man,
I'm here to help on this one.
These letters are not helping me, man. Can't read.
It might have even been Rebeshki, like a sh. Now I can't remember, but it was either a s or a sh.
All we know is our initial reactions of Rebecki are incorrect.
Yes.
Incorrect.
I think it was Rebeshki.
What a wild little performance from him, man. That you want to talk about aggression? That's a guy with aggression. That's a guy with forward movement. That's a guy with takedowns under his belt. That is a guy who will not be denied. That was a freight train of a man. So that was a hell of a performance from him.
Mark.
What a fucking tank that guy is. I mentioned this last week. This is a guy who I was reading people saying he could be very similar to Mateusz Gamrot out of the Polish scene, of a guy who's going to kind of just come in and be in the mix pretty quickly. I don't know if we saw that much skill from him, but it might be in there. I think he's got to kind of figure out his pace a little bit. But he showed a lot of good signs. And having that guy walk you down seems friggin' miserable. That is an aggressive powerful man. Everything he throws has bad intentions. And like I said, he may have come out a little too hot pace-wise, which he kind of paid for as the fight went on. But he switched to the wrestling, and he seems to be just as good there, if not even better. And that allowed him to get it done. So he's a guy with potential going forward for sure.
I think his reaction to his lack of gas and the fact that it really didn't stop him from doing whatever he wanted to that kid is just signs that his mental fortitude is on some other shit.
I agree with that.
Okay, in the flyweight division, Alan Nascimento defeats Carlos Hernandez by submission via rear naked choke. Mark, take it.
Dude, Alan Nascimento might be a problem. He didn't come into the UFC with a ton of fanfare. He kind of took the long road. I think he was on Contender Series, and he didn't get in. Had to take some more fights and so on. And he lost his debut to Tagir Ulanbekov. But looking back on it now, it was a very close fight. And Tagir Ulanbekov has looked pretty good otherwise. And Nascimento's a training partner of Charles Oliveira, and he's now won 2 in a row since that debut loss. He ruined Jake Hadley's debut, who was a big prospect coming in and who Nascimento pretty much handled. And now he quickly disposes of Carlos Hernandez. Carlos Gonzalez is the former Colorado Rocky baseball player, so that's where my mind is at. But, another flyweight to watch. There are many at this moment.
Omar.
Yeah, man. I don't know. Now that you say that, I might want to go back and take a look closer at it because it seemed like a lot of the situations they were in ended up becoming opportunistic or were opportunistic when, to get to those moments. But, coming from the Oliveira camp, those guys are very, very sneaky with their jiu-jitsu and things that seem very opportunistic or things that have been set up 3-4 moves before. So it's very possible that Nascimento is just that sneaky and I may not have caught it. But regardless, his ability to control from the ground, I thought was fantastic. I mean, as good as that performance was, the one thing you can't take away from Carlos Hernandez is he was scrappy. That kid didn't stop. He wasn't, at no point was he trying to give up, but he got caught in an anaconda, man. Not an anaconda choke, in a figurative anaconda. Yeah. And got choked out real bad. And standing. And it wasn't the first choke attempt of that round. He had already fought off at least 1 or 2 of those prior. But by the time the round was almost over, he finally sunk that choke deep. He was standing up and went down, and it was done. I don't even think he went down, actually. I think he tapped while he was standing.
Yep.
He tapped while he was standing, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. It's nasty. It's a nasty rear naked choke.
Okay, let's get back onto this.
How's that for lightning round, Mike?
Okay, in the featherweight division, Dan Argueta defeated my guy, Nick Aguirre, by unanimous decision, 30-27 across the board. Omar, staying with you.
Aguirre's a scrappy kid, man. Another one who didn't stop moving the entire time, didn't stop trying to fight. But Argueta's wrestling credentials, or at least his pedigree, seems to be much higher than Aguirre's, and he used it. He used it to his advantage. I don't think there was any room for interpretation in that fight. It was from bell to bell a working from Dan Argueta.
Mark?
Yeah, the first round of this was actually some real competitive grappling exchanges. Argueta did probably get the better of the round, but it was a good one. But then from then on, it was Argueta who was able to keep the pressure, combined with his strength advantage that he obviously had in there, and his wrestling. It was enough to take the cards. But Aguirre didn't look grossly overmatched or anything like that. He just kind of got outworked in this one, and Argueta's now on the board with his first UFC W.
Yep. Okay, last one. Charles Johnson, round 1, TKO over Jimmy Flick. Mark?
Jimmy Flick had a couple opportunities to work on the ground, and he's very dangerous down there historically, but he couldn't take advantage of them. We've seen Charles Johnson stay safe on the ground before with guys like Muhammad Makayev, so he may have some eventually he got tapped, but he may – wait, did he? Yeah. He may have some underrated jits, but on the feet, Jimmy Flick was in trouble. Charles Johnson kept switching stances, and then he would step into the open side, like going body head, and Flick couldn't adjust to it. And it was a kind of a quick stoppage for me. Flick was maybe okay, but he was covering up like an odd amount, so I feel like he was almost asking for the ref to intervene, and Charles Johnson was looking very dangerous, so I don't hate it, and it's a big first UFC finish for Charles Johnson.
Umar, take us home.
Yeah, Charles Johnson is equal parts ridiculous looking and equal parts intimidating. I found his forward pressure to be really disturbing. Maybe it was a specific matchup. Maybe he won't have the ability to do that with higher ranked opponents, but his ability to move forward, land the shots he was landing, getting out of the way and continuously trying to move forward, the ground game as well. The man looks ridiculously strong, like not just physically, but his reaction and his power and everything. He just looks he looked significantly stronger than Jimmy Flick in that fight. And it got to be painful to watch Jimmy Flick continuously on the ground, like trying to survive against Johnson. And it got to a point where I think the referee too just didn't want to see anymore. I feel like I don't remember Charles Johnson being that dominant in his previous fight, even when it was competitive. But if this is what Charles Johnson is bringing to the table with everybody going forward, I'm on board.
Okay.
Real quick, because this lightning round has not gone on long enough. Did you guys hear the post-fight interview from Abdul Razak Al Hassan?
No.
About the one I sent you guys with Joaquin Buckley?
It's one of the greatest fucking things
that
I've
one.
ever
Yes,
seen
yes,
in my
yes,
life.
yes.
Oh my God, that's incredible. It's absolutely incredible.
Fuck that bitch. Fuck him. What? Joaquin, you are a bitch. You are a bitch. You hear me? Does he hear me? You are a bitch. That is one of the greatest post-fight interviews I've ever seen.
Every time he finished, which was he went into the same exact wording like 11 different times, he would go, "I'm sorry."
No, but the best part was all the media guys there, because he would go into this rant, he would stop, he would say sorry, next question, and then at one point one guy was just like saying he's just like, and Buckley, and he was like, oh, Buckley, what a bitch, he's a bitch. Do you know I was supposed to fight him? He is a bitch. Yo, I love.
Dude, you're good at that accent, man. That's pretty good.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But yeah, at the very end, right as he was about to get up, when they were like saying thank you, one guy went, Joaquin Buckley, and Al Hassan laughed at that one. The whole room laughed.
Dude, he was so good, good.
It was great.
I think he gained a few fans out of that. That interview was gold, absolute gold.